Out of the breaking news we brought you at the top of this hour, former President Donald Trump has been indicted again, this time for efforts to overturn his 2020 presidential election loss. This is his third indictment. In New York, state prosecutors have charged him with falsifying business records about a hush money payoff to a porn actor before the 2016 election. In Florida, the Justice Department has brought more than 36 felony counts against him for allegedly possessing classified documents after leaving the White House.
And joining us right now is former State Attorney General and King 5 political analyst Rob McKenna. Rob, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Of course, we know that we listed a lot of legal troubles for the former president, but we want to focus on the indictment today. Of course, that is the indictment linked to the January 6th attack at the U.S. Capitol. I just want to get your initial thoughts.
Well, this is another piece of very bad news for former President Trump and for people who think they're going to support him for president in 2024. And that includes a pretty large majority of self-identified Republican voters. It's bad news because this is not a local partisan political prosecutor in New York, where you have a partisan elected official as the DA. This is a special counsel appointed by the U.S. Department of Justice, a man with serious credentials, and they've pulled together a lot of evidence. And it's really important to understand what this indictment is not about. It is not an indictment against President Trump for contesting the results of the election. It is not an indictment of him for falsely claiming the election was stolen. The indictment actually says he can do those things. I mean, saying things that are false is protected by the First Amendment, for example. This is about a conspiracy that he participated in to obstruct the federal certification of the election results, and by doing that, denying people's right. All of us have a right to have our votes counted and to be meaningful.
And what do you make of the fact that he is the only named defendant in this indictment?
That is very interesting. I'm not sure what that means yet. I mean, it's pretty obvious that some of the people who are referenced without being named in the indictment are people like Rudy Giuliani. Mm-hmm. This is not to say they couldn't be indicted themselves later on. I think the decision was made by the special counsel, Jack Smith, to really just focus on former President Trump at this time. We'll see what happens in the future with the other unnamed co-conspirators or unindicted co-conspirators.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're looking at a 45-page indictment. So what is Mr. Trump's legal exposure or risk in this case compared to those other indictments that he's already facing?
I think it's quite serious because these are civil rights charges, these are obstruction and conspiracy charges. Those are felonies under federal law. I think this is a much bigger deal than what's happening right now in Manhattan, for example, the DA there. I think what the indictment claims is that President Trump was targeting one of the core functions of our national government, which is to assure the peaceful transition of power through a constitutionally mandated process for certifying elections. That's a lot more serious than lying about the value of a real estate on a tax form in New York.
And speaking of the seriousness, if he is convicted in this case or any other case, that would hinder him from running as well as serving as president. So what does this truly mean for the 2024 elections?
It doesn't hinder him legally. He can still run. He could be elected. There's nothing in the Constitution which says that someone can't serve as president from a jail cell. I don't think imprisonment is a likely outcome in any event, but nevertheless, what this really amounts to is a very big political millstone around his neck. Republican base voters are sticking with him. Over 70% have said in recent polls they believe he had a right to contest the election results. They're saying, hey, he had a right to have that rally on January 6th. So they're sticking with him. But politics, electoral politics, is a process of addition. You have to add votes. All of these indictments are going to make it harder for him to expand his base. You've got, according to a poll I saw the other day, 43% for Trump and 43% of general election voters for President Biden, 14% undecided. I think this indictment makes it harder for him to persuade a majority of those 14% undecided voters to move to his camp, and therefore it makes it very hard for him to win the election in 2024.
Is it fair to say, though, that we saw other, obviously, indictments and charges come down, and he still does have supporters?
He does, yes.
So what is the tipping point?
The tipping point has not been found with Republican base voters, but Republican base voters are only part of the vote in the general election in 2024. He has to attract large numbers of independent voters to his column, and that becomes harder if they look at all these legal cases against him and conclude that he's either not the right guy for the job, or at a minimum, is going to have a hard time doing the job with all of these legal clouds over his head.
It is fascinating to watch all of it play out, obviously a first in history. Rob, we obviously appreciate your expertise and your analysis. Thank you.